In this video, we are going to be talking about ayahuasca. I personally have sat with this particular plant medicine, and I want to share my experience and also some information that I happen to channel today. My name is Catherine. I'm an energy healer, spiritual coach, and nurse practitioner. If you need personalized coaching or an energy healing from yours truly, then you can go to my website at catherineglassman.com, or you can email me at hello@catherineglassman.com. If my voice sounds a little raspy and the room looks a little dark, it is because I am filming at 6 in the morning. It was literally the only time I'd be able to do this. So I apologize if I sound like and look like I am tired. I am. So, what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a plant medicine from the Amazon rainforest. It is primarily found in Peru, but there are a number of Central American and South American countries that provide this medicine, along with now North America, like the United States. Of course, here in the US, though, it is 100% illegal, and I believe it's considered to be a Schedule 1 controlled substance, meaning that I haven't looked, so I don't actually know for sure. I'm pretty sure, but um, it's considered to be in the same class as like heroin. But we know that there is a reason why it's considered that particular type of drug, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, ayahuasca is made in the form of a brew, and the brew is made out of two plants, one of which is a vine, and the other one, I believe, are leaves. Now, they both have like long names, so I'm not going to say them because I can't pronounce them, but it's two main plants. And from what I understand, one of them holds more of an MAOI compound, while the other one has more of the DMT compound. And so separately, they can provide healing aspects, but together it creates what is known as ayahuasca. And when you drink the ayahuasca, you're able to experience the medicine for a longer period of time because they're combined together. Now, of course, obviously, I don't know all of the, technical and scientific terms and terminology and things like that. So I am just really talking to you guys as your spiritual friend, but this is what I understand it to be. Ultimately, it forms one of the most powerful hallucinogens on the planet. And so, yes, if you don't understand what ayahuasca is, and if you haven't experienced it for yourself, then yeah, an outsider would label it as just a drug. But to the indigenous in the Amazon rainforest, they consider it to be sacred plant medicine that has been used for thousands of years. Many people from all over the world will travel to Peru or Costa Rica to experience plant medicine. And a lot of people will report that it is like getting 10 years of therapy crammed into one hallucinogenic experience, into one night. Traditionally, you would go to Peru and you would sit with a shaman. I think they're considered like brew masters, and they have their own particular terms there. But you would sit with a shaman, and it would usually be a group setting. So there will be 6 to 8 people all in like a big like hut type of looking place. And of course, because ayahuasca has grown in popularity, it's like like the production of it has gotten bigger. And so there are some local shamans that still hold like smaller ceremonies, like deep into the rainforest. And then there are others that are a little bit more commercialized, and they are like really beautiful retreats, and there's a spa, and you have your own personal cook and things like that. So you can definitely choose which experience you want to go for. And then, of course, there are people who just get their hands on the ayahuasca and kind of make their own thing. So I know that there are people in the US that can infuse it into like chocolate and things like that, and then you can just basically just take it however you want. Of course, when you do it that way, depending on your intentions and things like that, it can potentially just kind of turn into a drug, but that's not the purpose of ayahuasca at all. So, what can you expect when you have one of these ceremonies with ayahuasca? So, basically, you will drink the brew, and then eventually the brew will start to work. And you will often just have a lot of visions. You will have visions primarily about yourself, but then you will also have like a hallucinogen experience. So when you close your eyes, you'll see very beautiful, geometric, colorful shapes, and you'll just receive messages. The reason why it's considered medicine is because it helps you open your consciousness to a different level. And by doing so, you are able to tap into your own traumas and heal them. And if there are certain traumas that are related to the physical body and you heal those, then you end up healing your physical body. Now, the legend has it that thousands of years ago, the people that lived in the rainforest, they were just existing, but there were also shamans that would help heal the people. And the forest itself, the trees and the plants, went up to the shamans and said, "You can use us to heal your people." So the rainforest is what told the shamans what to do, how to do it, that would ultimately make ayahuasca. Now, what's interesting is that anthropologists and scientists, they still don't understand how this is even possible because there are over 50,000 known species of plants in the Amazon rainforest alone. 50,000. And yet somehow, thousands of years ago, the indigenous were able to figure out the two plants that you bring together to ultimately create ayahuasca. They don't understand it. And shamans have always said that it's the spirits of the rainforest that told them. And I remembered hearing one shaman say that your doctors heal your physical body. We, as the shamans, heal the soul. Now, the chemical compound that is found in ayahuasca is DMT. And DMT is actually excreted from your own pineal gland. And apparently, there are 2 times in your life where you will excrete the most of it, and that is when you are born and when you die. And many people believe that a form of yourself does die when you sit with ayahuasca, but of course, it's more of like an ego death rather than a physical death because it ends up being so life-changing that you're not the same person anymore. Now, with my personal experience, I actually sat with ayahuasca formally twice, and then I also took it once before those times. The one time before was in Colorado, and I was with a friend. I thought that we signed up for like an actual ayahuasca ceremony, when really this just ended up being a knockoff. Just honestly, we ate the ayahuasca in the form of chocolates in a house with a bunch of people, and then they just kind of let everyone loose as if to like be in like a party kind of. And it just was what it was, but it was not what I was looking for at all. It felt very uncontrolled and it just felt like a party. And I believe that the intentions were good, but it just was not what I was looking for. Now, so the second and third time I did it, I was in Nevada, and those were incredible. The shaman that I worked with in Nevada, she studied with the Shipibo tribe of Peru for many years. I want to say like at least 10 years just in Peru. And the way she had to study was by drinking ayahuasca like almost every day for like months or something like that. And she has a lot of wild stories, and it's so much fun to listen to her. And she is an American, but when you talk to her and you sit with her, you can very much tell that she was born to do this. And she is an incredible facilitator, and I trust her very much. So I'm very fortunate and very lucky that I got to experience that while she was in Nevada for that short amount of time. So basically, after I contacted her, I told her what my intentions were. And my intentions at the time were to understand why I was astral projecting. So my awakening had started, but I was on the search for understanding of what was happening to me. And in my spiritual awakening video, I mentioned that I was going to um, churches and temples, and I was reading books, and I was just trying to understand what was going on with me. And this was another way of me trying to find those answers, was by sitting with ayahuasca. And so she agreed to have me. And so the first thing is that you have to do a dieta, or a diet of some sort. And it basically is just you fasting from like things that can be considered like toxins to your body and to your mind. So for 2 months, in this program, they really ask you to do it for at least 2 weeks because they know it's a lot to ask of somebody who's never sat with ayahuasca. But for 2 months, there is no sugar, no seasonings, no salt, no meat, no alcohol, smoking, sex, masturbation, porn, um, no news, no like just anything that can potentially cloud your mind and, of course, cloud your body too. You want your body and mind to be a very clean vessel so that when you drink the ayahuasca, it will be a cleaner and more pure experience. So this is what I had to do for 2 months. And I'm sure that there's more that I couldn't do or eat, but it wasn't really that difficult for me because I, for one, was very excited to do the ayahuasca. And two, I wasn't really eating meat, and I really don't eat a lot of seasonings anyway. I don't know. I guess I just have like a sensitive palate. I don't know. But anyway, of course, sugar was the challenge for me, hands down. But yeah, so it starts with that. And of course, during this time, you are encouraged to just set your intention and really think about what it is that you want to get out of this experience. What's interesting with me personally is that even though I had started my awakening and I had already started making positive changes with my lifestyle and with my body, like I still was transitioning, right? So before my awakening, I was a very different person. I was a bartender at one point. Um, so I was drinking a lot. I had a very dark period in my life where I was very depressed and suicidal, and I basically became an alcoholic. The person that I was with introduced me to pills, and I was taking pills, and it was just bad. And so that, like, there is a period of my life where that was my lifestyle, going out, doing drugs. Yeah. And so then I have my awakening. I start to see reality very differently now. And I start to make changes. Okay. But of course, the changes didn't happen overnight. And so I'm doing this dieta. I'm feeling good. Okay. A couple of days before I'm actually ready to sit in ceremony, I get a text from some friends, and they ask me if I want to go out with them. And I hadn't seen these friends in a while, and I'd been feeling like a little lonely and disconnected. So I was like, yeah, sure, like let's go out. And so I'm out with them, and one of our friends, her girlfriend, played in a band. And we all decided to go watch her play in this band. Well, her band apparently every year would play at the Adult Entertainment Convention. And this is in Las Vegas, okay? And so, whatever, like we're not going to that event. We're going to see our friend perform, okay? So every year they would perform at this convention and they would perform it specifically in like the webcam model area. I don't know. And so we ended up getting like free passes. So we go to this casino, which was at the time was like the Hard Rock Casino. We go there and I'm like just excited to be with my friends and I'm excited to just be out. And so I want to like participate in the atmosphere. So I get a drink. Okay. And yeah, I understand that I'm on this dieta, but for whatever reason, I was like, I'm just going to let myself just have this one thing. Okay. I ended up getting chocolate as well. Okay. So needless to say, I'm kind of falling off the wagon here. And so I've got this drink, I've got like chocolate in my pocket, and I'm walking with my friend and we're on our way over to like the webcam area, okay? Now, mind you, I would never like attend this, but that's kind of how it was in Las Vegas anyway. Like you'd never, at least for me, I would never intend to go to anything like that. I would just be happen to be meeting friends or something like that, or it was like a pit stop before we'd go somewhere else. Okay. So that's kind of how I was treating it. So I'm in this casino, I'm walking around, I'm holding this drink, I'm with my friend, and we're on our way there. And out of nowhere, I get hit with like some kind of energy where it's almost like time stopped. And I'm looking around, and there are like adult film actors like walking past us. Some of these women are barely wearing anything, okay? Like straight up just lingerie, walking around in heels. And then there's like creepy guys like following behind them. And I remembered getting a lot of looks because I don't know I think they were trying to figure out if I was an adult film star. Like that's just the vibe that I was getting. And I was dressed like nicely, but I wasn't dressed like that at all. But because I was in that setting, people just assumed that maybe I was a part of that industry. And so time stopped. I'm looking around and I just feel like this energy around me. And this energy didn't speak with words, but it spoke more with like an energetic transmission or like a download. And the download that I got was because I'm stopped in my tracks and time has kind of stopped for me, right? The download that I got was take a good look around you and be ready to face this in ceremony. And once I got that download, I'm literally looking at my drink in my hand. I'm thinking about the chocolate that's in my pocket. I'm looking at all of these adult film industry people. I'm literally in a casino, right? There's a bartender over there. I was literally in the pit of addiction and indulgence and a, a lack of, I don't, it was basically what one would call like the epitome of sin. And I'm in Las Vegas, Sin City, right? I just had this very sobering moment where I realized, and I'm not judging people who participate in that, like, whatever. But the bottom line is that it still is a certain frequency. And I'm not judging anyone who participates in that because I obviously was in that at one point, not the adult film part, but like the drinking and the going out, okay? It's all part of the human experience. But in that moment, I understood that I was trying to go somewhere. I was trying to change where I was going on a spiritual level, on a mental level, and where I was going was not this. And so my intentions were not matching up with my behaviors. And I could not have been reminded more clearly of that in that moment. And all of this information and this experience is only happening within like a 10-second span. But the energy was so heavy and it was so palpable and very sobering. And now at this time, that was like my first drink. So I hadn't been like drinking. I had maybe like a couple of sips. And so, but even in that moment, I felt way more sober than I felt being sober. Like the clarity was just insane. And that was when I knew that ayahuasca was already working. Shamans have always said that ayahuasca is a consciousness. And in that moment, I knew that that was true and that it was speaking to me at that very moment. And so I sat that drink down and I was having like a moment. I wouldn't call it a panic attack, but there definitely was some anxiety like brewing inside of me because I just knew that I was not supposed to be there. Of course, the reason why I was there ultimately was to connect with the people that I cared about, with my friends. And they don't participate in these types of events. One of them was a nurse. The other one is a firefighter. And so, maybe do they do those things maybe in the privacy of their own home? Maybe. But that was not the intention for tonight. And so we just watched our friend's band for a little bit and then I went home. And I felt so guilty. And that was just a clear reminder that I was leaving that lifestyle and that I needed to fully prepare in exiting that lifestyle and learn to be comfortable with that. And it's just so funny that literally 2 days before I'm getting ready to sit with ayahuasca, right? I had done this diet for 2 months, and then all of a sudden, right before ayahuasca, I get tempted to go out with some friends, and then it's like the ultimate temptations of all temptations. Like it was so thrown in my face. And then of course, the message of get ready to face this in ceremony. Like, wow. I will say that from my experience, that is very much how ayahuasca works. And I'll tell you more about that here in a minute. So now comes the day of the ceremony. And there are about 8 of us in a big room, and we all have our own little area with a like futon and a blanket and a bucket and like a roll of toilet paper, all of us. And so all of us go like one by one to speak with the shamans alone. And there's 2 of them now. And, they ask like what our intentions are, like privately. And I was like, I felt so guilty. And I told them everything of what I did. And I was like, is this going to work? Like, is ayahuasca even going to work with me now because I did this? Like, did I just ruin everything? And they like smiled and kind of laughed a little bit. And they were like, ayahuasca already knows. And then I remembered, like, I kind of snapped out of that guilty, energy. And I remembered my experience that I had because I was so focused on like what I did and how guilty I felt that I forgot that I had that trippy, sobering moment, like right in the middle of it. And so when she said that ayahuasca already knows, I remembered having that moment and I was like, yeah, I think ayahuasca does know. And so I kind of calmed down and I just was like, okay, you feel guilty. Like, just try to make the most of your experience at this point. Because at the time, I really did think that I kind of may have ruined it and maybe that the medicine isn't going to work as well. And so I go sit down in my area and everyone else finishes up. So then the ceremony begins and they start kind of instructing us on like how things are going to be done, like which order it's going to go in, how many times you're going to be offered to come up to have the brew. If you want to drink it more than once, you can, but it would just be twice max. And the shamans will also drink a little bit as well so that they can be within the same energy. And so after that, they get started. And the first thing they do is they offer rape or hape, which is a tobacco. And I believe it can be mixed with like plant ash as well. So it's like a ground up ashy tobacco substance. And they take this tool, and I don't know the name of this tool. Obviously, you'll definitely have to reach out to somebody who is an ayahuasca facilitator for all of this detailed information, but I'm just giving you my experience. They put it in this like tool that has it kind of looks like a V, like a wooden hollow V, and they put the tobacco in the V, and the facilitator will put it in their mouth, and the other side will actually go in the person who's receiving it in their nose, like in their nostril. And they'll slowly blow it up their nostril and stop. And then they'll do it to the other side. So then now you have this tobacco sitting in your sinuses. And when you have that, you're instructed to not swallow, you spit. Okay, so once you start to feel it like drip down your sinuses, you spit. If you swallow, it will make you very nauseous and you will be sick. And so we did that. I will say that was definitely not my favorite. I am I'm just really sensitive to smells and I just get nauseous very easily. And so I did get nauseous immediately. But that's just me. A lot of people really like it because it is the reason why they do it before the Aya is to ground you. It is a grounding energy. It also helps cleanse not only the body, but it also cleanses and decalcifies the pineal gland. So it really is just a preparation for the ayahuasca medicine. And so I remember trying to get out of it, at least with my second ceremony, because that was the first time I had ever done that. But the second ceremony, like I remembered and I tried to get out of it, but I think if I really, really tried, they wouldn't have forced me to do it, but they were like, you can do it. And so, yeah. So then I go sit back down in my little section. And as the stuff starts to drip down, that's why they gave us a bucket. And I have my bucket and I'm spitting it out. Okay. And then over the course of like a few minutes, it's starting to wear off and I'm starting to feel better. So I was like, okay, it wasn't that bad. And so now, because we have started, it is very much an internal process. This is not a social process at all, which I appreciated because the first time I took it, it was super social and uncontrolled. This one, you were instructed to be quiet and to sit with yourself. And yes, if you needed to cry or, purge or anything like that, then you're allowed to do that. But you are not permitted to speak to one another at all. And you will only speak quietly if the shaman comes up to you and starts speaking to you first. So this is very much an internal thing, and it's performed at night because the medicine, it's just traditionally always been done at night. And I think it's because it's an internal thing. I think if you were to do it during the day, it would be a little bit more external and you would be drawn more to the outside world when you really need to go into your own inside world. So now I'm sitting in my section. Everyone has done the rapé, and then now it's time to drink the medicine. So the shamans, they prepare the medicine, they put it in a cup, and there's like an altar that you go up to and you drink. So the shamans are sitting there, and one by one, we get called up there. So I go up there, and it's in this cute little clay cup. The altar is very beautiful. It's got like beautiful traditional like Peruvian decor, and it's got like a jaguar's head with like beautiful beads. It kind of looked like, this is obviously like not the same tradition, but if I can explain it to anybody who has not, experienced ayahuasca or hasn't been to Peru, if you've ever seen the movie Coco, right? That's actually based out of Mexico, but like the part where they become like the spirits of the dead, and it's very colorful and there's a lot of geometric shapes and things like that. That's kind of what the decor looks like. Okay, so very colorful and just beautiful. And then there's flowers and crystals, and there's gifts that other people who are sitting that brought. And so they put the gifts on the altar, basically just kind of as an offering to not only ayahuasca and the shamans, but also just to the group in general, because this has now become a ceremony that we are all participating in, and it is a spiritual ceremony. So I didn't bring anything because I didn't know that that was a thing, but I just really appreciated that. I thought that was really beautiful. And so I go up to this altar, and she hands me this cute little cup, and there was not very much medicine in it. I would say maybe half a cup, maybe. And so I drink it, and oh, it does not taste good at all. And I can't remember if they gave us water. I don't remember. I mean, I had to have had water. So, but I honestly can't remember. I just remembered it being, yes, I think I did have water because I remember being able to like rinse my mouth out. I know that we couldn't like chug water for sure, but I'm pretty sure I was able to rinse my mouth out after that because it doesn't taste good. But it kind of looked like a brownish reddish clay color, but of course it wasn't clay, it was like an actual liquid. So I drank that and I sat back down, and then everyone else just went and drank the brew, and that was that. And so now we're sitting in like a dark room, and it's like dimly lit, and we're just sitting there and it's quiet. Okay. And I would say maybe like 15, 20 minutes pass and the medicine starts to work. I forgot to mention that on the day of drinking the ayahuasca, you fast. You fast pretty much all day long. I think we had to stop eating by like 10 a.m. and then the ceremony started at 7. So we were fasting. So that would make sense that the medicine would start to work in such a short amount of time. And the fasting not only was to help the medicine like facilitate a little bit easier, but also because there is a purging involved. Okay. So the medicine starts to kick in. Okay. So I start to feel a little altered. I'm not, tripping or anything, but I'm definitely starting to feel something. And I think that all of us all started to feel something all at the same time, which is why the shamans also drink the medicine. They don't drink as much, but they do drink it to kind of also get in that same space and to also join the consciousness of ayahuasca. And so, because it was like they knew exactly what they were doing, because as soon as I started to feel something, the shamans, and then there were 2 shamans and like one other like assistant, they all got up and they grabbed like instruments and they started singing. And what they sing is called icaros, which is basically they called them prayers, but they're basically like shamanic healing songs. And I didn't understand the language, but what they told me is that they are basically just they're like hymns for Catholics, except icaros for shamans. And one of them was playing a guitar. The other one was playing like this I don't know what they're called, but it's like a wooden, it's not, I don't think it's traditionally used as an instrument per se. I think it's more to like clear energy, but they kind of look like wooden wind chimes. So I know she took that out and they're just singing, and it was really nice. It felt like that's exactly how you were supposed to do that, because it just started to flow, and it definitely eased my tension for sure, because once you're in the medicine, you're starting to have things come up. Okay. Now, for me, what I experienced, and this is pretty much across the board after doing it a couple of times and speaking with other people that also have experienced ayahuasca, you will start to have things come up in your consciousness that you need to deal with. And this is mostly going to be like traumas and fears, projections, all the things that you need to and that you are ready to face. A lot of people who have had a lot of trauma in their life are scared of this part, because a lot of people spend a lot of time and energy burying their traumas, and ayahuasca is just not going to let you do that anymore. Now, let me explain the energy and the consciousness of ayahuasca, of the energy itself. Ayahuasca is described as a feminine energy, and she's considered to be a mother. So she is often referred to as Mother Aya or Mother Ayahuasca. And so when you decide you want to work with Aya, it's not like going to therapy where they slowly start to ask you questions and just kind of let you take the steering wheel of your healing. Aya is just going to take everything that you need to see and that you need to deal with and throw it in your face. So for me personally, I was seeing a lot of past traumas, a lot of relationship issues that I was having. Addiction and alcohol and drugs were coming up, and I was seeing like memories of things that I've done and ways I've behaved, and just it was not a pretty picture. But because I'm under the influence of the medicine, like right now, if I were to take a moment and try to think about one of those times in my life that I'm not very proud of, I can kind of tap into it and then let it go and start to think about something else. That's not the case with ayahuasca. Like, it's like you see a full-on projection, like a film projection of what you were doing, and it's like you're back in that experience, and you do not get to leave. You do not get to leave until you face it and heal it, however you may heal it, okay? But usually what will happen, and at least this is true for me, is that I would be faced with some sort of trauma that I experienced in my life. I would be faced with it. And once I learned the lesson from that, then you release that energy, which is where the purge comes in. There are different forms of purging. The most known form of purging is vomiting, which is why they give you a bucket and toilet paper. And so you can purge, you can cry, you can yawn, you can kind of like shake your body. Like, everybody's form of purging would be different. You can use the bathroom, right? And so there were many people purging into their buckets. That was not my purging. I never had to purge when drinking ayahuasca. The only time I ever purged was when doing rapé during one other ceremony. And like I said, it's because it just made me very nauseous. Other than that, I never purged with ayahuasca. So if you have that fear, there is a good chance that maybe you won't do that. My purging was crying. And later on, I learned that my other way of purging is yawning. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And so I'm getting hit with all of these things that I need to face. And I am fairly doing a decent job at working through it, but I'm crying a lot. And it was very intense. And so if you can imagine hours of this, that's what it was. Being hit with all of these visions and going through all of these lessons of like really deeply traumatizing things that have happened in my life. And of course, it's just making me bawl. And so the ayahuasca too, as a medicine, will kind of get strong at certain times and then kind of back off a little bit. So it's not like it's just full on, going at 100 the whole time. It's kind of very intense for a few minutes. I see the things and then it backs off a little bit and it allows me to kind of release some of that energy through my form of purging, which was crying. And so I'm sitting in this large room and there are at least 7 other people going through the same thing, except they're dealing with their own traumas. So there are some people that are crying, many people that are vomiting, right? There are many people that are just kind of rocking back and forth. But everyone, even though they were going through intense, experiences, for the most part, everyone maintained composure. And this is in part because of the shamans, because they're walking around and just keeping their eye on everyone. They're not interacting with anyone, but if someone were to, be a little over the top, or if they felt like someone else needed like a little bit more assistance, then they would go up to them and speak with them quietly so as not to disturb everyone else. But this particular ceremony, nobody had any issues. There was one ceremony, it may have been the day after that, because the way I sat with the medicine was there was 2 nights of ayahuasca and then 1 day with San Pedro, which is a cactus plant medicine. But in one of the ceremonies, there was a girl who was crying heavily, and then her cries turned into like moans, and the moans, I mean, to be honest, sounded a little sexual. I don't know, like, of course. And I was like, I can't be the only person thinking this. And so it was very distracting. And so one of the shamans came over and started speaking to her and was like, hey, you need to be a little bit more quiet and you need to be more respectful with the other people that are sitting with you. And so she kind of toned it down a little bit, and so they controlled that. So that's basically what happened. I remembered at one point I needed to use the restroom, but I was very much deep in the medicine, but I really had to go. And I remember standing up and getting like a little dizzy and like trying to walk up the stairs, because that's where somebody was in the downstairs bathroom. So I had to go upstairs, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be a journey. And so I get up the stairs, and this is the part where, of course, people would compare it to a drug, because I'm like under this influence, trying to make it up the stairs, going in the bathroom. And then, of course, there's mirrors, and it just was, that was a whole thing. But I made it back to my little section safely. I do remember in one of my ceremonies, the guy that was sitting next to me, he was cracking me up, actually. Like, he was just kind of very deep into it. He was rocking back and forth, which, obviously he's going through his own process. But as the night was winding down, he was like very happy and just excited. And after the shamans sang one of their songs, so they're singing their songs throughout the night, because these songs help you release that energy that doesn't serve you anymore. That's why you're purging. You're letting it go. And when they sing, it helps that energy leave the space. And I remembered after they sang one of these songs, he like cheered and clapped his hands. And one of the shamans came over and they were like, "We're very glad that you enjoyed the music, but we really need you to not do that. There is no clapping, there is no cheering. We do appreciate it." It was just really funny. He was very excited. So then at some point in the night, I want to say like around midnight, you get offered to drink more of the brew. And I can't remember if I drank it again. I know I think in most of the ceremonies I would drink it again because I wanted to just work through as much as I possibly could. I do remember there was one ceremony where I didn't. And then there was one ceremony where I slept through the entire ceremony. And the reason why it was because the person that I was dating at the time really did not want me to do drugs, right? That was his attitude about it. And we got into a fight right before I go to the ceremony. And for whatever reason, in that ceremony, I ended up sleeping the entire time, slept through the whole thing, through the singing. And I woke up to like the very last song that they would always play because I remembered that song from previous ceremonies. And I was very upset, but I spoke with the shamans and they said that it's likely because my consciousness would have been drawn to that issue or to that relationship or whatever. And I wouldn't have been able to do deep healing work on things that I needed to focus on. And so sometimes people will just sleep through it and the medicine will just work on your sleeping body and your sleeping consciousness instead. But still, I was pretty disappointed. I broke up with that person shortly after that. Like I understand their concerns, but that work was extremely important to me. And the fact and that argument and that energy got in the way of me going through my healing journey. So that I couldn't afford to have that in my life. Now, during one of the ceremonies this, by the way, it is not unheard of to have supernatural experiences during these ceremonies. That's actually much more common because there are spirits around you. And I'll talk about what I channeled about ayahuasca for this video specifically. But there are spirits present. And so it's not uncommon for people to see things, for people to feel things. But this is also why you sing the prayers, is to keep the spirits that are intended present while releasing the ones that you don't want there. And so I remembered there was one time, one ceremony where I was in it deep. And it was like, and I also learned that the more you heal, the more trauma you face and the more you heal while under the medicine, the more she will give you. And it's like ayahuasca will only give you what you can handle, but if you can handle it, you're going to get more. And so I remembered one night I was laying on my side and I was just seeing trauma after projection, after guilt, after, just all of these things. And it was really intense. And I'm trying to breathe through it because the shamans also said, like, if you're really deep in it and it's very intense for you, just focus on your breath. So that's what I was trying to do. I'm focusing on my breath. I'm breathing kind of hard and I'm not like quiet. I'm like, right? Because it was intense. Okay. And so I'm breathing hard. I feel like I'm not really processing the traumas as well as I was before. And so now I'm kind of like panicking a little bit. I'm hyperventilating. And out of nowhere, the outside wind kicked up as if there was a crazy storm that had just started out of nowhere. I mean, the windows were banging. Like you can hear like trash cans outside moving and trees moving. Like it sounded like an intense thunderstorm that was not supposed to be there. And I remembered it threw me off so badly. I stopped and I just started listening and I was like, what is happening? Like, and of course I'm trying to process, like, is it really happening or is it just the ayahuasca? Like, what's going on? But no, it was really happening because I looked out the windows and the wind was just insane. This was a perfectly clear night, by the way. Now, I don't know if there were clouds in the sky, but I know that there was not supposed to be a storm or anything like that. And it was just so interesting that I was breathing that heavily, and then out of nowhere, this wind came out of nowhere because it wasn't raining and there was no thunder. It was just wind. And that wasn't the first experience that I've had with something like that. I have had moments in my life where I was like almost in sync or maybe even controlling like an element of some sort. Like I remember as a child, there was one time I was walking home and I swore that I was controlling the rain. Like I would ask it to rain and then it would rain. And then when I would tell it to stop, it would stop. And I was just walking home playing with the rain and it was just doing this with me. And it took me back to that moment because now, like there was something happening with wind, right? Is it a coincidence? Maybe. But it wasn't. Like I know that wind happened because of the way that I was breathing. And it was almost as if to like take me out of that, like shock me out of that moment so that I can just get a little bit of like grounding and clarity. And so then like the wind stopped and I was like, that was trippy. And so I go back and the traumas start to kick up again and I'm starting to breathe. And then for whatever reason, I yawned. And when I yawned, I could feel that energy leave my body. And so that once I yawned, whatever trauma I was dealing with, like exited my consciousness and then the next one started. And then once I would yawn, that would leave my body and then the next one would come. So that's when I learned that yawning was another form of purging for me. And that was actually much more efficient and effective because once I dealt with that trauma and learned the lesson, boom, I would let out a really big yawn and then on to the next one. And that was how I was able to deal with that, that intense night. Because clearly the breathing was not working for me, but the yawning did. And I ended up looking it up later because I still yawn to this day, especially when I do EFT tapping or if I do energy work on somebody. And so I always like, if I'm doing it live with a person, if I'm doing Reiki and things like that, I always have to warn them like, hey, if you hear me yawn, just know it's not because I'm tired or because I'm bored. It's because I'm moving the energy out. And apparently that actually is a thing because I ended up looking it up. So that was pretty cool. Now, I personally did not see any entities or feel any energies. But I know that there were people that did report like seeing spirits and things like that. So that's not unheard of at all. Which that would have been pretty cool, but I think I was just so focused on healing my own stuff that I didn't have time to like have a supernatural or paranormal experience in that sense. I mean, the most supernatural thing was the wind, which was cool. And I've had another experience in my life where it was like that, but it was the ocean instead. Super cool. And you know, I personally know people who are airbenders, who can control the wind, who can control fire, pyrokinesis, aerokinesis, hydrokinesis, right? So I know that that's real. I just never thought that I would ever have that ability. I still consciously can't do it. It's just only when I'm deep in some sort of spiritual process is when it just spontaneously happens. Now, I made a video on calling in UFOs, and in that video, I explain like my journey in that led up to me having a UFO experience. And that journey began with one of my ayahuasca ceremonies. And during one of my ceremonies, the medicine is starting to wear off and I'm just kind of calm and laying there and just trying to rest. And I was laying down. I was laying down on my left side, I believe. And I heard like this alien like technological sort of transmission, like a like type of sound, but it was very loud. And I sat up and I looked around and everyone else is like starting to like come off the medicine. So they're all relaxed, you know, some people are just sitting up and like meditating, whatever. But I was looking to see if anybody else heard that sound and nobody else was reacting. So I was like, okay, that was just clearly me, but it was very loud, but I only heard it in the ear that was down, like on the pillow. So I was like, okay, whatever, it must just be the ayahuasca. And so I lay back down again. And again, like I'm not experiencing the medicine anymore. So I was a little confused why I heard that, but I lay back down and I heard it again. And I just sat up and I was like, okay, I guess I'm just sitting up now. I'm not going to sleep. And so I just sat there and just started meditating. But when that happened, instantly I thought of aliens. I just thought of extraterrestrials, like maybe communicating with me. Like I didn't know. And I should channel that because I still don't know what that was. But I intuitively it feels like a connection of some sort. And so, but at this time in my life, I believe that aliens probably existed, but I had never had my own experience. The only reason why I believed it is because other people, so many people around the world had had their own experiences. And so I guess I wanted to believe it, but at this time, so many things have happened to me that now I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable saying that I believe something is real, even though I hadn't experienced it. Whereas before my awakening, I would never say that because I said that all the time about God, that I never experienced God. And so I don't believe it. I had experienced ghosts, so I believe those were real. But if I didn't experience it myself, then I just didn't believe it. So after this, I'm like believing that aliens have to be real because of so many experiences, but I had never had an experience myself. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I do want to talk about the visuals. Now I've done psilocybin or mushrooms, okay? I've done LSD or acid, okay? And they're all hallucinogens and they all will give you different type of visuals. And I would say that mushrooms kind of make things like a little wavy. Like you don't necessarily, at least for me anyway, I didn't hallucinate anything that wasn't there. It would just change the texture and the movement of what was already there. So like if I was looking at a textured wall, the texture would almost look like lava and like waving and things like that. And the walls would maybe breathe a little bit, okay? With LSD, same thing, just maybe a little bit more intense and maybe a little bit more clean. Psilocybin is a little bit more of a body experience and you can be a little bit more emotional with psilocybin, whereas LSD I think is a little bit more in the mind, less body, and so it's a little bit cleaner, if that makes sense. But ayahuasca was completely different. Ayahuasca was, yes, things were a little fuzzy when my eyes were open, but when I would close my eyes is where the real magic began. The beautiful geometric shapes that you see in the movie Coco, right, is exactly what it looks like when you close your eyes. And I don't know why I'm like referencing Disney movies, but maybe it's because they're like cartoons, so it's easy to just create the illustration rather than to try to pull from like a real life experience. But there is another movie, a Disney movie. Oh my God, Princess and the Frog. There's one scene where they're in New Orleans and they're messing with this voodoo shadow man, and he's, performing like this little magic thing, and it's all colorful and there's like skulls floating around. That's what it looked like too. Okay. But of course, with ayahuasca, it's less cartoony and it's just more like bright, beautiful colors with a black background. And it was almost like watching fireworks, but the fireworks would take specific shapes and move like fluidly. And it's like each shape would have its own direction. If you look up, and I've looked this up before, but if you look it up on YouTube, like ayahuasca visuals, you'll see like dotted, colorful, neon shapes with a black background, like moving around. And that's what it looks like. And it's actually very beautiful. And that was definitely one of my favorite parts, was just laying there with my eyes closed and just watching like the colors dance around. And it's almost as if like the colors and the shapes are the visual representation of the consciousness of ayahuasca. And it was like it would dance with you and be playful with you. Because even though it is a very intense medicine that throws you in the pit of your own shadow, it still wants to comfort you and let you know that you are empowered to heal yourself. And in those comforting moments of ayahuasca, that is where you will experience that, is like the beautiful colors, and it's like playful and it's just calm, and it's yeah, that's one of the more pleasant parts of it. And every ceremony is different, but with my experience, and I think that this is true for most people that I sat in ceremony with, like we would do 2 nights of ayahuasca and then 1 day of San Pedro, but it seemed like most people had the most intense experience on the first night, and on the second night, it was more of like ayahuasca was just kind of holding you and letting you know that everything is going to be okay. And I think this is where the mother aspect comes in. And it just ends up being a little bit more gentle, because when you see the truth of your own shadow just thrown in your face like that, it's a lot to handle. And so it's necessary to have those moments of like just being held by the medicine. I forgot to mention, just a side note, that I noticed, even I didn't purge, but I noticed I was kind of watching some people purge, and this is going to be a little gross, but it was just something that I observed, that all of the purge, the substance that they purged out, it all looked the exact same. Like everybody would purge out like a black substance. Even though all of us had been fasting, or you were supposed to fast all day long pretty much, everybody would purge like just this dark brown or black substance. And, I can't help but think, like, was it like literal toxins? Like if you're going to purge out like a trauma or a toxic energy, I would imagine that it would look like that. But it just seemed across the board that everyone's purge looked the exact same, because you would also have to get up and go and like dump it. And I would sometimes see it when people would walk by, and it all looked the same. It was very interesting. So I just wanted to mention that. Now, on the third day, we would, Yeah, it was a drink. We would drink San Pedro, which is a cactus, which the chemical compound is mescaline. And that is considered to be a grandfather energy. And that is considered to be more of a heart opener. And that is taken during the day. And that is actually more of a social medicine. And so that was more to help us kind of soften up a little bit from the 2 nights prior and to just integrate everything that we had learned in a more loving and soft way. So we would drink the San Pedro and then we did like exercises, like little, like we were at one point, we were all instructed to bring a rock and then they would give us instructions of like, okay, what do you see? We would basically like scry with the rock and write down information. And then in the end, they would tell us what each thing meant. And it was very fascinating. It's like one of those like psychological like puzzle games. And then, of course, part of the ceremony was to make an offering to the corners. So north, south, east, and west, we would make offerings, okay? And it was really cool. So we would all go in a circle, and for each direction, there would be a different intention, right? So, for example, for the east is considered the rising sun, and it's considered to be new beginnings in shamanic practices. And so for the east, we would all have seeds, and we would take the seeds and drop them on the ground, and we would set an intention for something that we wanted to plant for our future. And I remembered making a friend during one of the ceremonies, and I remembered her talking about how she really wanted to get pregnant, but she was really scared, and that was why she was in the ceremony. And so she planted her seeds to start a family. And I don't know why I was compelled to do this, but I basically gave her my seeds. And I said, I am planting my seeds on behalf of so and so for her to start her family. I don't know why I was compelled to do that, but I was. And so, she gave me a hug and they were like, that's very sweet, whatever. And I think it was maybe 7 months later, she called me and she was like, hey, do you remember those seeds that we planted? And I was like, no. And yeah, so now she has 2 beautiful girls. So that was really cool. But I remembered there was one woman who, I don't remember what it was about. It was something about like healing. Maybe it was the direction of the south. I can't remember, but she started talking about children and how children were just really important in her life. And we're sitting outside, okay, and it's like late morning, early afternoon. And we're sitting outside in this person's backyard who's holding who's allowing us to use this space. And there was a brick wall in the back. And behind this wall, it was just an empty field. And so the only neighbors were like the side neighbors and then neighbors like across the street, but nobody behind us. And we're sitting there and she's talking about children. As soon as this woman starts talking, we hear children playing in the background. They're giggling and laughing. And it sounds like it's coming from the field behind us. But we knew that was impossible because there's nobody there. But she's talking, she's very passionate, she's talking about children. Meanwhile, I'm looking to my friend and we're like looking at each other like, do you hear that? And literally, I'm getting chills. As soon as she stopped speaking, the children stopped. And we did not hear them at all before she started speaking, and we did not hear them at all after she stopped speaking. And I was like, that is a trip. But of course, the shamans, like that's just a normal occurrence. It's just like supernatural, like things happening. It's just a normal thing for them. But they find it to be fun because they see our reactions and like, it's just really cool. And then after that, it basically is just like a social thing. So then they bring out food and, we get to eat. Finally, after all of these days of like fasting, we get to eat like delicious food and they make us soup and it was really nice. And then you get to leave whenever you're ready. But of course, you can't help but make friends. And of course, like you know, I'm very grateful to have been able to have this experience. And so I'm actually going to leave a link to that shaman's website. And her name is Kat, and she actually owns a place in Costa Rica. They're called the Plant Medicine People. And I usually try to be very careful about who I suggest and promote and things like that, especially when it comes to plant medicine, because you have to be very mindful and careful about who you sit with, because just because it's ayahuasca doesn't mean that every person who uses the medicine and facilitates with the medicine has good intentions. But I fully trust her, so I will leave her information in the description below. Now, let me share with you some of the information that I personally channeled for this video specifically. So first I asked, and take it or leave it, this is all information that I channeled through meditation, okay? So I asked, what is ayahuasca? And they told me that ayahuasca is a consciousness gifted to humanity from the plants or from the rainforest of the Amazon. And so naturally occurring, the only place you will ever find it is from the Amazon rainforest. Of course, there have been people to take the plants and plant them in other places, but as far as like a naturally occurring gift, it comes from the Amazon. This is an earth-based technology that helps humans expand their consciousness. And this is considered to be a gift to its fellow inhabitants, because the indigenous, the planet, they understand that there is a balance that needs to be maintained. And the balance greatly relies on each species, each person to respect the other species of the planet and to respect the planet itself. And so in order to help humans understand this balance and to get a better look at how this balance works is by giving us the ayahuasca medicine so that it can break through the consciousness that we perceive and tap into a higher level of consciousness so that we can actually see the true nature of reality. And so people will say like, oh, you're just taking drugs, you're just hallucinating because you're on drugs. Well, when you take this plant medicine, what you are seeing is reality. If you're hallucinating anything, it's this reality. It's this third dimension that is the hallucination. Okay, this is us being plugged into the matrix. When you drink ayahuasca, it unplugs you and you see reality for what it actually is. And so, you know how aliens have shown humans like alien technology, and it's how we were able to advance some of our, aircrafts and military crafts and things like that. Well, it's the same thing, except it doesn't come from aliens from outer space. It comes from the plants from planet Earth, because the plants and the trees and the rocks, everything has a consciousness. Everything is alive, which is why I know Native American shamans, they believe that everything is medicine. So you can use tree medicine, or you can use bear medicine or snake medicine, because it's all interconnected. The way ayahuasca helps you see this is by making you face your traumas, because it is all just a projection. It's experiences that you've gone through that are keeping you blocked from fully understanding your true nature, your true blueprint at like a 0 point frequency. This is why you need to heal the traumas. And once you heal the traumas, you'll be able to see life a little bit more clearly. And when you see life clearly, that is when you understand that everything is one thing. And then you have a deeper understanding and respect for not only the plants and the animals, but for the earth itself. It helps you see that ayahuasca is a consciousness. And so, of course, you're going to treat plants a little bit differently now. You're going to treat humans a little differently now, because then you see how multidimensional they are. You treat animals very differently because you understand that they also have a consciousness and that they are fellow inhabitants of the planet. Because of how much humans have been gifted as far as like the actual planet itself, with alien technology, with plant technology, with just advancements all around, we have a lot of control over what happens to this planet. And therefore, we have a lot of responsibility. And this is why ayahuasca has been given to us, is so that we can understand just how much power we truly have and how to wield it in a responsible and respectful way. And so not only was ayahuasca given to us so that we learn how to treat our fellow humans and the earth better, but it was also given to us so that we can ultimately save our own species. Because the way that the majority of humans are treating the planet, and especially, the ones that are running societies right now, governments, societies, things like that, even though most of them aren't human. But the way that it's all being treated, it's very taken for granted. And there is an imbalance currently. And what I was told is that the balance will always be maintained in one way or another. It would be preferred if we can consciously bring back the balance. But if we don't, then the balance will be maintained for us. And it's not like it's never happened where a society or a species has just been completely wiped out in order to restore balance. And so I asked, why is ayahuasca considered to be like a feminine energy, like a mother energy? And what I got is that, and I didn't mention this before, but when a lot of people have visuals, they will often see a snake or a jaguar. So the snake and the jaguar are often used as symbols for ayahuasca. What I got was that the snake actually represents one of the plants. I think it's the vine. And the jaguar represents the other plant of the two plants that make ayahuasca. And so the snake not only represents like transformation, which is what I have read. It represents transformation and like death and rebirth and shedding old layers. But what I channeled was that it also represents fear and the shadow, because most people are scared of snakes. And when I see the snake of ayahuasca, it's massive and it's black and it's with yellow eyes and it's very intimidating and scary. But that's exactly what it wants you to see. It wants you to face your fears. It wants you to sit with your shadows, which is why it is often performed at night. And so the vine is represented by the snake, and the leaves is represented by the jaguar. And the jaguar is a symbol of empowerment and fearlessness and courage. And so you are faced with your shadow, but you are also given the strength of courage. And so when these two plants come together to make ayahuasca, it creates a new consciousness, which is Mother Ayahuasca. And the ayahuasca is there to nurture you while you go through the process of healing. Now, she does encourage you, if you do decide to sit with the medicine, she encourages you to actually go to the rainforest, because she says that the plants of the rainforest will actually protect you. And I've heard it time and time again from multiple shamans, from multiple people who have sat with the medicine, that it is always the best if you actually go to Peru and do it there, like do it in the homeland of ayahuasca, because it ends up being a different experience. It's just more powerful. So I have not done that, but I am not opposed to it. And so I encourage you that if this is something that you are interested in, then you meditate and you start speaking to Mother Aya first. And just try to form a connection with the spirit of the medicine. Ask if it's something that would be good for you. Ask if, just put it out there. Put the intention out there and see if you get signs, or see if you truly do feel called to work with the medicine. And I will say that I really advise that you be called to the medicine. I would not advise that you go because somebody else talked you into it. And I definitely would not advise you talking other people into doing it. Just because you think somebody needs the ayahuasca does not make it true. They have to be called to work with the medicine, because that can create bad karma if you talk someone into sitting with ayahuasca and then they just have a terrible and traumatic experience because of it, because that is a possibility, which is why you have to find somebody that you truly trust and that you are actually ready to sit with the medicine. Because if you're not ready for it and you're just kind of forced into it or talked into it, then it might not be a pleasant experience. So it is definitely a calling. I will say that I think if I go to Peru, which I will one day, because I really want to visit Machu Picchu, if I go one day and I'm kind of offered and I feel like it is meant to be, then I'll do it. But honestly, at this point in my life, I'm not called to work with the medicine, because I feel like I have worked through a lot of the trauma already, and now I feel like I have other tools in my spiritual toolbox to work through those traumas that I don't necessarily have to sit with Aya. But, if I find myself in Peru and it's, I don't know. I'm actually really looking forward to going to Peru, because they say that you can feel the ayahuasca just by being there, and you don't even necessarily have to drink the medicine. So that's what I am really looking forward to. I'm actually going to reach out to the plant medicine people and see if they're willing to give me a discount code to offer to you guys. So if there's not a discount code, then they just didn't give it to me. But if there is, then yeah, use it if you feel called to it, that is. I personally think that it would be unfortunate if somebody went their entire life and never experienced this beautiful plant medicine. It is powerful, it is intense, but it is life-changing. You really do end up being a different person afterwards. I think that if you're anybody who has to make huge, major decisions on behalf of society, on behalf of the planet, on behalf of a species, that you probably should sit with the medicine at least once. Because some of us are spiritual, and some of us do have an ability to see beyond the veil, but not everybody does. But ayahuasca helps you see that side of existence. And if you ever get the opportunity and you're called to do it, please do it with the traditional ceremonial respect. I think you're just going to gain so much more out of it if you do it that way. And so I will leave you off with something that one of the shamans said. Her name was Abby, with what she said at the end of one of the ceremonies that has stuck with me forever. And I wrote it down. And so this is towards the end of the ceremony. She says, "Congratulations on your beautiful healing journey with Mother Ayahuasca. This work is not easy, and you are faced with some of the most challenging, heart-wrenching, yet beautiful and profound truths about yourself. Yes, you came and sat in ceremony, but when you leave here today and you enter the world with your newfound knowledge, that is when the real ceremony begins." I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Bye.